So, Callum, your overall thoughts on the More album?
Yeah, I would say it's a really, really good soundtrack overall. I think there's some really, really good songs, really good atmospheric and tone-setting songs there. With one very memeable song, that was certainly something. But overall, I would say, yeah, there's a good range of songs for a film
Oh
that's
yeah,
more artsy.
there's a lot going on this album. A lot.
Hmm A lot of, very much a lot of variety, which I always enjoy from a soundtrack and composers. As I famously say about Murray Gold, I just love his variety, and I always
Mhm.
appreciate that in composers that can do a whole range of different kinds of songs.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at side two, the only song that's similar to side one is a Bar, and that's because it's like the Nile song. Everything else on side two feels like a completely different album to side one, outside of maybe Up the Khyber. If you swap Up the
Yeah,
Khyber and a Bar, it's like two completely separate albums in terms of its style. And I know you loved the Nile song, Ellen.
I loved the Now song.
It was very good. It is very clear what the intent was behind making the soundtrack to make it seem very trippy and focus on the experience of these characters in the film, or taking drugs and doing shit as a consequence of that. Which is why a lot of the time I was like, yeah, this is very Legion, because that vibe is the vibe Legion has. It's just like exactly how Legion is. These characters are, on a drug trip, or mentally just like spiraling, and being and going through the motions, I guess, of what that entails, and not knowing what's real and what's not. And that is kind of what I said here for this film, is just the kind of, I guess, lack of understanding of the characters as of what they're experiencing. That's at least the vibe I get, and especially like having a very much eclectic soundtrack. It makes you feel like you're always supposed to be like that. You don't know what's coming next, so you might have a track that's like the Nile song. It's very like hard rock, but then you have a track like the Glucksnacht song, and you're just kind of like, oh, I was not expecting that. And I feel like a lot of this soundtrack is like very out of left field, but not in a bad way. It always just seems like weren't expecting it, but with the idea of what the film is trying to be, I think it fits really well. This is all saying I haven't watched the film, but from the vibe I get from this album, that's kind of the idea. I think they were trying to go for the soundtrack. Whether or not the film achieved it by utilizing the soundtrack, that's another story. But yeah,
It's a very unorthodox film. I respect its balls in some respects. I don't like the execution, because the execution's garbage. But it's a film where there's not a single likable character, and it's done that way on purpose. It's meant to be like that, and that's because you meant to sort of put yourselves in the shoes of people that are making terrible mistakes, and it having this uneasy psychedelic feeling really complements that idea, I think. Of course.
yeah. And you're saying that, I think the dramatic theme, I think it fits really well as like more contemplative.
Yeah,
if it is
because
a film
you're
about
almost you're not seeing the wrap up of a character that you love. It's more about you're seeing the spiraling journey of characters you don't.
Yeah, I was gonna mention
You know?
Joker. That's kind of what it reminded me of. That kind of vibe.
Oh
like,
man, imagine if
contemplative.
Pink Floyd had scored like a Joker kind of film. Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Especially with the Glucksnacht.
Oh, I would have loved Joker to have Glugs now. That's the one thing I adored. I adored the Joker soundtrack, but it was missing a Glug Snort. I'm sorry. But it's just-
I have something quickly to just say. Just sorry to interrupt. So I literally, I put in Glug Snort and the song Spanish Piece comes up. Obviously, because it's the lyrics, but that's just funny. That's just
Yeah, it
funny
is
to me.
funny.
I'll put that in Google.
I mean, I genuinely could see the Joaquin Phoenix Joker looking in the mirror, doing a taxi driver scene and pretending to sing a Spanish piece. I can imagine that.
Glucksnacht. I like it. I like the album a lot. One where I would recommend to people, just because where it's a very unique album for Pink Floyd given the circumstances. but it does show off their versatility to be able to do a very catchy album around a film soundtrack, and to have a soundtrack that would work, to be honest, in some of the best written films. It would work very well.
It would work on Legion, so
memes,
that's all you need to know.
Exactly. Cymbeline is my favourite by far. I think it's quintessential Pink Floyd, and it's the one that stands out the most. Points go to.
I mean, you always like the ones that have the most Roger Waters lyrics in them. Is what you tend to say. I've noticed.
Yes.
And it's
I
true
really
that
like Roger
Cymbeline
Waters.
is the song that has the most lyrics and tells the most story with its lyrics.
Exactly. Meme song obviously goes to Clocksnort.
Mm.
But even though we meme on it, it's still something that's very effective in what it sets out to do, and I think that tells you a lot about this band.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the worst of the three so far, but I very much like it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, it's Pink Floyd. Worst Pink Floyd is still great, in my opinion. I still think this is... It's an unorthodox album because it's a film soundtrack. It has some songs in it, and it also has some score in it, but I think it still achieves what it's doing. I think it just takes understanding what you're listening to and what kind of music it's trying to be to enjoy it. There's a few songs on here that I regularly listen to and enjoy. I mentioned, obviously, last time at the start that Cirrus Minor is a song that is very special to me because of the emotion it brings out of me. Just there's something about the whole melancholic vibe of that song that is so powerful. Obviously, you've got stuff like the Nile song and Ibiza Bar, which are heavy metal bangers, and you've got Green is the Color, which is a beautiful love song, and Cymbeline, which is brilliantly written and brilliantly performed, and you got some really atmospheric, instrumental in there as well. And obviously, because I think I prefer Pink Floyd when they're in full creative control, it's not one of my favorite of their albums, but I still really like it. I still happily listen to it. I still think it shows a lot of their talent, their potential, and a lot of what they can do with a film soundtrack, and I think it's just, I think it just is a testament to this transitional period they're going through after Sid Barrett left, and I think they're still producing great content at this point. It's just that, from here they're going to move on. What's the next step? So yeah, I think More is underrated for a lot of reasons, and I think it gets a bit of a bad rap just because it's not a traditional music album, but I really like it a lot.
Based.
Yeah. So, with that said, in the next review, we'll be doing some singles, but also the album we're going to be covering is called Uma Guma, and that is the album cover, which is like an inception of mirrors.
Yeah, that's a neat.
And in each
mirror changes, yeah.
And each mirror, the arrangement of how the band is positioned changes.
Yeah. That's really neat.
Uma Guma is a very unique album. It's funny because we just reviewed a soundtrack which is also unique. I would actually argue that this album might be even more unorthodox than More. In fact, I'd say this might be their most unorthodox album, tied with maybe one other one. Because this is a double album. The first two sides are live performances of songs that you've heard. And the second half, sides 3 and 4, are a concept album where each of the 4 band members get to do a song by themselves. And basically they go balls to the walls and they go as experimental as you could possibly imagine. So
that sounds interesting.
This is a very, very outside the box album, and a lot of people don't like it because of that, but I think it's secretly brilliant.
Secretly brilliant.
Jeb, I assume you've listened to this.
I have indeed, and hot take, really love this album.
Yeah.
I will say this probably about every album.
This is not one. This is not
You're
one
just
for the normies,
a normie shill.
Oh no,
Yeah,
it's the other way around. It's the other way around. This is not an album for the normies at all.
Mm-hmm.
This is like there's a song literally called. Well, it's
Don't
like the
spoil
longest
it.
song name you'll
Don't
ever
spoil
see.
it, but it's like the
I won't
longest
s-
song name of all time.
Yeah,
Yeah, but if you spoil it for me, I will slap you.
I
The day I
won't
see
spoil
you,
it.
I will slap you very hard.
Yeah. This
But we're
is
gonna do a
this is the I would argue this is the most experimental Pink Floyd album ever. I would say. Would you agree, Jim?
I would agree. You could tell by like the album name, Uma Gumma.
Gumma.
It's not. It's so out of left field. But with the song name, we're gonna have a challenge next time. We're gonna listen to the song, and then you all go to remember it by the end.
Well, I mean, I know the name off by heart, but I'm not going to spoil it for Callum. I'm going to wait till we get to it, and then I'm going to read it out for him.
And then he's got to remember it at the end, and if not, he dies.
Yeah. But yes, no, the next album is, the first half is live, and the second half is studio, and it's also each member does their own song by themselves, with all the instruments and all of the vocals. I guess, okay, technically Nick Mason's wife is in his song, but that's neither here nor there. So, yeah, Callum, your anticipation for Uma Gumma?
I'm expecting to have a proper Umaguma time. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really enjoying these albums and singles. So
the word Uma Gumma is Cambridge slang for sex. Obviously, all these posh boys in the Pink Floyd band are very aware of Cambridge slang. So when they were
into sex, apparently.
So they were doing the Uma Gumma when they were boys.
The fact that it's just like each one got a song to just play around with sounds really interesting to me. I dig that kind of idea.
In a lot of ways, it's the band separating themselves into parts, figuring out what they can do as individuals before they come back together and reinvent themselves for the 70s. Because this is the last 60s album. This is 1969. Funnily enough, an album called Uma Gumma, which is Cambridge slang for sex, comes out in the year of 69.
It's just meant to be, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny because there's a song on there called Sisyphus, which sounds like syphilis.
Look, now I think it might be a little bit of a stretch, but
Alright, anyway. We will see you all next time for Uma Gumma.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Don't forget to say night night to Glugsnore.
Hello.